Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the three biggest stories in manufacturing and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you get a notification and can join us in the live chat. Jeff, how you doing this week?
Pretty good, David. Yourself?
Just kicking that cold where it's just enough that I feel like my voice is going to break at least 16 times, and I won't be self-conscious about it at all and let it bother me at all for the entire podcast at all.
Hey, so another benefit of once the kids get out of the house,
Yeah.
in addition to being able to take naps on Saturday afternoons,
Yeah.
you don't have somebody bringing in all of those germs constantly rotating to
Yeah.
everybody in the household.
Every day.
Another thing to maybe look forward to.
I will look forward to it in 13 years or so. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great.
Very good. Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, Epicor. This week's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Did you know that 70% of companies say generative AI has either already disrupted their business, is starting to disrupt their business, or will have significant impact in the next 18 months? Did you know 32% of companies view AI as the most important technology in their organization today? And did you know that 28% of companies will pay more for AI as they consider it the most essential in their SaaS application? Well, a new report, AI in Manufacturing, How AI is Reshaping Manufacturing Strategies, tells you how to implement AI and increase time to value with AI. So download the report right now. Our first story this week, the rare factory options that turned ordinary cars into million-dollar collectibles. Guessing Headlights recently took a look at the factory options that turned performance automobiles into auction record holders. When these cars were new, they weren't really special. They were production vehicles that you ordered by checking the right boxes on a form. But many people didn't check those boxes because they didn't need the extra performance and or cost, or never really knew about it. Well, over the years, these cars became million-dollar collectibles with a leap in value that traces back to factory-approved options that were available, yet rarely chosen. Rarely chosen.
I don't know. There you go.
There it is. Okay, what is that, 3 or 4? I don't even know. All right, breathing. So let's take a look at Guessing Headlights' top 3. The 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible, which is worth some $1.1 million. The Judge was already a hit, but when they made it a convertible, they created one of the rarest factory GTO configurations Pontiac ever offered. Only 168 were built for the 1970 model year. Then there's the 1969 Chevy Copo Camaro ZL1, worth about $1.09 million. In the late 1960s, GM dealers found a workaround for new restrictions that allowed special purpose vehicles to bypass standard restrictions. Through a central office production order, or COPO system, select Camaros could be ordered with 427 cubic inch V8s. GM had limited them to 400 cubic inches. Most received iron block engines, but 69 were fitted with the all-aluminum ZL1, an engine derived from Chevy's Can-Am racing program. Finally, we have the 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible. They put a Hemi in a convertible and only built 12. Now they are worth several millions. Anna, with these lists, I like to look backward as a way to look forward. But as product lines are trimmed down and options are limited, will we have such rarities in the future?
I think so. I think there always will be a collector's market for anything auto that's strange and unique. And I think what's interesting is the article stresses how the vehicles are perhaps less valuable due to their merits, but just how rare they are.
Yeah.
Which is strange because when you think about it, it's like the features that people don't want are what make these
makes people want them later.
Yeah, so these vehicles are actually less desirable now, and then so much more desirable down the road because.
So the F-150 Lightning.
Well, so I do think that EVs might be the next vehicle type to watch, considering all the hits and misses that took place during the run-up to commercial success of EVs. Because you did see a lot of like specialty or prototype, limited run type stuff. You saw entire brands that have disappeared.
The Lordstown truck, whatever that was.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you know, you look at how many short-lived electrics there have been. You know, Tesla just announced that they're discontinuing 2 major brands that they kicked off with, the Model S and the Model X. You know, maybe somebody's sitting on like a very early version of this that has some of the first features that they stopped using because obviously that model's been updated quite a bit throughout the years. Maybe they are sitting on a more valuable vehicle, even just the difference between last week and this week.
Yeah.
You know, I read an interesting, it was like a listicle about some of the vehicles that have increased the most in value over the last 20 years. One of them was the 2013 Mercedes SLS AMG. It had a gull-wing door, it had gull-wing doors. Mercedes made less than 100 of these. They were all electric. Now, they only went like 120 miles per charge. So it's not like, I mean, when you look at EVs today and how much range improvement is taking place, like that is just not a practical vehicle to have.
Yeah.
But at the time, Mercedes was trying to display some of their capabilities that they did have. It was a very like high output EV. It had a lot of power. It had a lot of torque. So it was just a showpiece essentially at that time. So if you got your hands on one of those today, not to drive it because it hardly goes anywhere. Or it runs out of batteries, but it's probably going to be worth a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, many automakers were doing things like that where they had these sort of short-lived startups, short-lived limited run type stuff that maybe in the future might look like a interesting vintage electric on the auction block.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting just because it's in the moment. It's what people didn't want, right? And it's so weird, especially as you age, when you see something from your childhood or from your past and you're just like, oh, it's one of those. And like, even though you hated it back then, you're just like, it reminds me of a simpler time.
But I want it.
Yeah. But it does also make me think about how whether or not will automobile collector items, will that market still exist in the future? You know, like, I mean, will there still be this niche group of people willing to spend millions of dollars for a Lucid prototype or one of the many iterations of what is Fisker on, like the 3rd or 4th one?
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I think yes. I think always yes. I mean, there's always going to be people that have more money than they know what to do with, and they have to do something with it. So.
Right. And there's a vault somewhere just filled with like Apple car parts and sketches. And once that opens, man, just wait for that auction. So, Jeff, from this list, which one do you want?
The Superbird. Not even a question, hesitation. As soon as I even saw this headline, actually my first thought went to the Plymouth Roadrunner. That was one that had a little bit more exaggerated spoiler on the back.
Yeah.
So this was cool looking at this. I enjoy this. I'm not a huge car guy, but can definitely appreciate all of the engineering that went into these 70s muscle cars.
Yeah. And you know what looks cool? Like,
that's
cool.
all relative.
That's relative. But
we were just talking about my kids before. I don't know what they would say, but
that's fair.
I think what was interesting in looking at these vehicles is it's really been a social. You can see the social transition here from form to function.
Yeah.
When you look at add-ons now for vehicles, it's not as much. Yeah, you can see it maybe the 6-cylinder versus the V8 or something like that for a larger SUV. But that's more about towing capacity and more people in the vehicle and stuff like that. This was all about form. There was nothing functional about these upgrades.
Yeah.
You do not need a 426 Hemi in any of these vehicles. I mean, and if you've driven them or anything close to them. I had a buddy in high school who had a Cutlass with a 454 in it. If I tried to drive that vehicle today, I would hate it.
Yeah.
People forget how loud,
Yeah.
how a front-wheel drive handles.
Yeah.
These vehicles just shook and rattled and made noise because that's what people expected and anticipated.
They're
So
beautiful
all of
machines.
these upgrades and options now are more about drivability, how well they handle.
Yeah.
And when you talk about collectibles, that's already taking place. It's just in a different fashion. When you look at all what we describe as tuner cars, they're already highly collectible. And you look at like the MX-5 or the Honda, what was it, the 2000? I can't remember the nomenclature, but a lot of those vehicles are already highly collectible, and they're only going to go up in value because people are tuning them and crashing them. So there's going to be fewer and fewer left, even though they were produced in mass. So I think it's interesting. I think one of the things that we might see actually come about if EVs go further and further is some of these different options for batteries. You know, if we look at engine specs in all of these vehicles and checking the box, if you wanted a larger engine, maybe that's going to come about with batteries.
Interesting.
You know, to generate more power.
Yeah, like this was the one with the first one with a salt battery.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. And I think one of the things we also saw over time, too, is a lot of these things with the engines, I think they were reduced intentionally in terms of options. Just because if people picked too many of these larger engines, I wonder how that would have impacted potentially some of the corporate average fuel economy restrictions and goals that they had. That's being lessened right now. So maybe we'll see some of these options for different higher torque, higher horsepower engines come back as people, I don't know, maybe they look to do something different with their vehicles. Now that some of those restrictions have been eased, we're sort of in this spot where EVs are more mature. So people aren't rushing out as much as they might take a minute and think about some of the different options that are out there. Although the automakers aren't really making, muscle cars or sedans right now. So
like I feel like this is kind of like the NFL or Major League Baseball, where like you got to wait X amount of years after a player retires in order for it to qualify for the Hall of Fame. The full hybrid plugins just were retired. So it's going to be like 7 years before they like start getting valuable, or people are like, oh man, I remember those.
Well, like, Stellantis retired them. Not everyone.
Oh, true.
Retired
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Stellantis will specifically be. Everyone else.
It'll just be interesting if that collectible becomes more about function as well. I mean, you look at now when people collect those because, like you said, it looks cool. It's something different like that. EVs, it's real sexy to look at.
Well, I mean, it's right. Like those are something where you could potentially still use it. Like, I mean, for me, I really like the 1978 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible. That was the one as we were scrolling through the article initially. I'm like, what's that? And I mean, it reminds me like a friend used to have like an old Buick Riviera that I really liked. And you're right. You're just like, but those when you drive them, it's not. You're just like, hey, all right. It was a different time. But I mean, hey, maybe some of the cars that are made now might still have function in the future. Do you have one like so? And a lot of these hold value because there is a memory or nostalgia tied to it for people. So like, do you have a car in your history? Like, so in 20 years, will I be at Mecum and I'll be like, all right, there's a 94 Dodge Neon coming up and it's red and I'm going for it. Like, is there a car in your history?
I've already tried to find the 1986 Z24.
Yeah.
Can't really find it. I went with the exact one I had in high school.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was an awesome car.
Okay. Anna? Like an old Jetta out there, maybe?
My high school first car was a 1988 Ford Taurus. So
yes.
I don't care about that.
You don't.
But, I mean, what if it came and it still had, like, the bungee cord holding on the exhaust or whatever, I mean, that's what my Taurus had.
Oh, I didn't have that.
Like some sort of, customization.
I did have a needle nose player in the tape deck.
Oh, so yeah?
I would play the tapes.
Yeah.
So I could get them out.
Instead of a oil cap, I had a glove. It turns out
that is not the same.
No, that was quite dangerous.
Yeah, that's a bad
Pretty
idea.
Unsafe.
Yep. No, like you can find some microfiche.
David
with my brother in the paper about that one. Turns out it's flammable. Anyway, our next most popular story this week: Lincoln Logs loses longtime U.S. manufacturing home. Gather Outdoors is a global company that designs and manufactures outdoor products and sporting goods. Gather recently announced plans to permanently close its Pride manufacturing production footprint in Maine. The factory makes cigar tips, golf tees, and Lincoln Logs. According to a WARN notice, 115 jobs will be lost. The facility's owner, Center Partners Management, told IEN, our Nolan Beilstein, that the impending closure stems from a cigar maker moving its sourcing for cigar tips. In a statement, Center said, quote, after our largest customer made the decision to relocate their sourcing, our highest volume product, the facility became financially unviable. The firm did not disclose the customer's name or who won the business. Jay Foreman, president and CEO of Lincoln Log producer Basic Fun, told the New York Post that the Hasbro-owned toy will need a new home after the main facility closes. So any takers out there? Foreman says Lincoln Log production will likely move overseas, potentially leading to a 10% price increase. Foreman attributed the shutdown in Maine to consumer reactions to rising prices influenced by tariffs. So, Anna, who's responsible for jamming up Lincoln Log maker Pride Manufacturing? Is it the loss of cigar tip business or slowing toy spend? Is it both?
It might be both. I don't know. The competing narrative here as to the reason why this facility is closing was a little bit strange.
It was a little confusing.
But Lincoln Logs, obviously kind of the focal point of this story because it's a very Americana type product. We all know it very well, named after an American president. Everyone had Lincoln Logs growing up. I don't know if that's the case now. My kids have a set.
Mm-hmm.
But Lincoln Logs have a kind of a strange history when it comes to manufacturing. According to Woodworking Network, until the 90s, Lincoln Logs were made in the U.S., but production then moved to China because it costs less to make them there. We saw that a lot in the 90s. Around 2014, they were looking to return production of the toy to the U.S., but during that time period, they tried to convert the logs from real wood to plastic. Does anyone remember this?
No, I don't remember that.
I don't
Sacrilege.
Either. I know, weird, right? And it said the market rejected the plastic version, and Connects, which was making them at the time under license, began to search for a different U.S. manufacturer to make them. That's when Pride Manufacturing came in. So in 2015, Lincoln Logs announced that they were reshoring production back to the U.S., and so that was in 2015, but that was kind of on the eve of the bankruptcy of Toys R Us, which, as we know, took place in, I think, about 2017. And Lincoln Logs lost a significant amount of business because of that. Not to mention that in 2018, Basic Fun revealed publicly that Toys R Us owed them millions of dollars for shipments of toys that they had not paid for. So that was like a pretty nasty little era for that company to come back from. But they did because of the pandemic, ostensibly because there was a huge spike in toy sales. I don't know if you recall at the time how when everybody was on lockdown and at home, you weren't taking your kids anywhere. You were buying them toys. I know that we did that.
Buying toys and making bread.
Buying toys and making bread. So again, even though there are competing narratives here, whether it was the cigar tips business losing that contract or if it was the dent in consumer demand over tariffs, it's not so hard to see how both maybe would have been impacted here. And this toy business, I think, was likely buoyed by COVID that eventually petered out and then left them vulnerable to things like increasing costs. So right now, we know that people are kind of tightening their belts.
Yeah.
So maybe they are seeing a decline in sales a bit, but now they're faced with the prospect of having to offshore this toy that's named after a U.S. president. And, I think the optics on that are probably not great. That's probably not what they want to do. And then in addition to that, potentially having to raise the price in a time where consumers are especially price conscious. Again, not a great outcome for Lincoln Logs if they cannot find another U.S.-based manufacturer, so you hope that they do. But again, they're looking for a custom woodworking company. A lot of shops out there that do that, hopefully, but maybe not ones that could handle that type of volume just kind of on the fly. So we'll see what happens.
Handle that volume at that price. And Nolan did reach out again to Basic Fun for a follow-up. Haven't heard back, so it doesn't sound like there are any takers for it yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a very it seems like a uniquely American nostalgic product as well. I could see, I don't know how this hasn't been brought into the political arena at all. They're not called China logs, and then we'll win the business back, Jeff, and they'll be freedom logs. It really writes itself. Actually, speaking of writing itself, the one thing, that we don't have with the Hasbro IP, we don't have a Lincoln Logs movie yet. Where there's some weirdly shoehorned action film that takes place in these prefab log homes. I mean, it writes itself.
I don't think it does.
I mean, that's basically what they did with Battleship. They're just but what if we took it and I think it added aliens into it?
Sure did.
I mean, it's right.
It didn't go well.
No,
that did not perform.
It was a movie.
It happened.
But I mean, okay, so when you look at this, so this company was Pride Manufacturing now. They were founded in Tampa, Florida, by making these mouthpieces for cigars, 1930. Operations moved to Maine in 1956 to be closer to the wood source, the forestry industry. They shortly added Gulf Teas. Then Center Partners acquires Pride in 2015, right after it makes that deal with Lincoln Logs. I mean, unfortunately, this kind of is what happens in business, right? Like, especially when you're this type of manufacturer, they find somebody that can make it cheaper or wins the business, and then you're out.
Yeah, this was a pretty, I don't know if volatile is the right word, but it was it was definitely ready for combustion, if you will. When you look at the products that they were putting out here, not high margins. When you look at these cigarette tips, that was their biggest customer. These are cigars that sell for like 90 cents a piece.
Yeah.
So I don't think the cigar tips themselves were a high margin item. They said it was their highest volume, but again, I don't think they were making a ton off of there. You throw in Gulf Teas, probably not great as well.
Yeah.
So I think if anything was to shift here and leave, it put the whole production facility in peril.
Yeah.
You combine that with the fact that Maine is perennially in 5 to 10 most expensive states to operate in for manufacturers. High energy costs are always in the top tier there. They have labor issues. They have a hard time finding people to fill manufacturing jobs. That's not exclusive to Maine, certainly, but another challenge that they were facing here. You combine all of these different elements, one thing drops out, the house falls apart.
Yeah.
So it was kind of writing on the wall there for a bit, I think, and this was just the first sort of log to fall.
I mean, it was right there, like the log cabin falls apart, Jeff.
Yeah.
No. Well, one thing that it made me think of too was that. So I think the client was John Morrison. I believe that was. But
Middleton.
John Middleton. Sorry, but an emerging market that is doing more and more in wood tips. Favor a guess? It's the cannabis industry. And so because there have been restrictions over flavoring smoking products, they're putting the flavoring into these wooden tips. And it is a incredibly it's a growing market in cannabis, to the point where a lot of people have been setting up their own manufacturing operations in the U.S. And so my immediate thought was I wonder if it's one of these sort of upstarts, basically blunt tip manufacturers taking the business over. But I mean, you're right. Like when it comes to a tea or a tip, not a high dollar product. And I also looked, so Anna, when I was looking into this, I was looking into how it affects the region, right? So the shutdown comes at a time when the forest industry employment in Maine is on the decline, and it's like a really weird market right now. So these forest products contributed to $8.3 billion in the state's economy. They employed about 30,000 people in 2024, and this is according to the Maine Forest Products Council. Between 2019 and 2024, employment fell by 7%. So it's an industry that's already hurting. Paper manufacturing sales down by 41%, but wood product manufacturing sales up by 45%. It's just created this weird flux. And you kind of made me think of it when you were talking about COVID, because over the past 5 years, they've had the pandemic. They've had unpredictable weather, which is only going to get worse, particularly in that region. Most likely, changing policies on tariffs and trades that seem to happen daily, instability in domestic and global markets, high inflation and interest rates. And it was just, as I was kind of looking at that picture, I mean, I always thought that the forestry industry was already a pretty difficult one to navigate, with paper sales in particular. Do any of those numbers jump out to you as surprising? Like, I was surprised that wood product manufacturing was up 45%. I was actually surprised that paper manufacturing was only down by 41%. But it just seems like that entire area in general is facing a lot of challenges.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what the wood products, like what that is comprised of and what's driving that increase.
Yeah. It's pencils. I don't know. It's just, there's been a run on them. All right. Our most popular story this week: Polaris closing Wisconsin factory after Indian motorcycle sale. Last October, Polaris sold Indian Motorcycle to a private equity firm based out of California, Carrollwood LP. Many were surprised, both that it was sold to private equity and that Polaris owned Indian. Polaris, which is based in Minnesota, has owned the motorcycle maker since 2011. Polaris is actually going to hold on to a small stake in the company, but the sale is expected to close in Q1, and Polaris has been forced to make some tough choices as a result. Last Thursday, Polaris told staff at a manufacturing plant in Osceola, Wisconsin, that the company intends to shut down the facility, which makes motorcycle engines, and it's going to close by the end of the year. The closure will begin this summer, and about 200 employees are going to be out of a job. The plan is to move all motorcycle engine manufacturing to a facility in Spirit Lake, Iowa, which was sold in the deal with Carrollwood, along with a factory in Monticello, Minnesota, and an industrial design and technology center in Bergdorf, Switzerland. According to Polaris, Indian is going to retain a majority of its team, about 900 employees, who will move to Carrollwood as part of this deal. Polaris wants to focus, quote, on the areas of our portfolio that offer the strongest growth potential. Last year, Polaris experienced stronger than anticipated sales of off-road vehicles, most notably its Ranger side-by-sides. Polaris is going to shift production of other components to another plant. Anna, many started digging Indian's grave as soon as this news hit, right? Is Indian destined to be another private equity casualty, or do you think Indian has a chance to thrive under its new ownership?
Yeah, I don't get the impression that Indian is like being hollowed out or it's going to be a victim of private equity. I think that it looks like, so let me back up a minute. You always want to look at the silver lining in some of these types of announcements. You can at least appreciate the amount of warning that they're giving these employees here. But, I think if you look at, you mentioned the 900 workers moving to Carrollwood. Those are primarily engineers, design team type folks. That's what's been reported, which shows, I think, that Indian is going to retain the majority of its team. It's 200 layoffs that we're looking at, 900 staying. Yeah. That's important to note, I think. The other thing, too, is Carrollwood appointed a CEO for the brand that has an extensive history in motorsports. This is an individual who worked for Harley Davidson for many years, for another off-road company for several years. So it says to me, if you keep the design team, you put somebody in a chief role that has a lot of expertise in the industry, plus Carrollwood's stated plan to operate Indian as a standalone brand, that suggests to me that this is less about gutting the company and more about optimizing efficiencies and truly making a go of this, because that's what happens after an acquisition. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you often see private equity come in, and then half the time, it's the writing on the wall of the company getting stripped and hollowed out. In this case, I have high hopes for the success of this venture because, you can't retain every facility and every employee often, especially when you have a whole new group of eyes with different objectives looking at the business and trying to make sure that you fish out any redundancies that you might have and maintain the most efficient operation that you can to go forward. And the signifiers that they plan to go forward are, again, retaining these technical staff and putting this chief executive in place. I think that they really are going to try to make this work. So obviously you're going to get some angry backlash. I know like Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin, said some mean things about how they were doing this to pad their corporate accounts and at the expense of the workers. You have to say that when you're the angry senator in the state where the layoffs are taking place. But I don't think this is necessarily about corporate profits. I think it's about how do we make this business work? Well, and if you look at that plant, I mean, they are making motorcycle engines, but there's also a big chunk of that business that are making components for Polaris's other business. And something's got, no matter what, that's leaving, So as to whether or not what's remaining can viably keep that facility open, or if it just makes more sense in Iowa. I mean, it sounds like it just makes more sense in Iowa. Right. So, Jeff, Indian brought in nearly $500 million in revenue for the 12-month period ending June 2025. I thought that was a lot higher than I would have guessed. Another thing that surprised me was that was only about 7% of Polaris's business. And when you're specializing in off-road vehicles like ATVs and the like,
if you're looking at a 7% of your business that is kind of very specific and isolated, it makes sense to spin that off.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays off. And I want to get into the Polaris Indian history in just a minute. But first of all, when you look at this from Indian's perspective, this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the long term here. Carrollwood LLP, the private equity that bought them, they have no background in manufacturing. Their previous acquisitions are in media, and I want to say, what was the other one? Real estate. I think those are the two big buckets that they operate in.
Diversifying.
So it's great that they brought everybody in. It appears right now they basically know what they don't know. Yeah. They don't know how to manufacture. They're going to put these people in place, allow them to do their jobs. Let's see how that goes long term, because the thing with Indian right now too is even if there weren't specific synergies when it came to products and parts and all of those things, there were those things in place when it came to materials, logistics, other shared resources, materials, all of that. They also were probably helped prop up a little bit of the profitability there. Because when you look at Indian's history, before Polaris, I want to say there were 3, 4, maybe even 5 different owners of this brand that all tried to make it work after World War II and could not figure out a way to compete against Harley and Honda and Kawasaki. If they can, now Polaris did. They actually found a way to bring this into the mix and make it work. They sold over 25,000 bikes in addition to the motorcycles that they sold. This is also like a $50 to $75 million merchandising brand. And that is what Carrollwood is good at. They know how to sell, they know how to brand, and that's what they're all about with this sort of carve-out strategy that they have where they do look at opportunities like Indian that doesn't the best fit. They're going to grab in, take that, and really focus on it and grow that brand. Great from the start. Love it all. Again, no manufacturing background with the owner of this entity, this brand right now. How patient will they be? There's going to be an ebb and flow to this. This isn't like real estate where you sell the building and you're done with it. This isn't like media where you've got a program in place where you can get different talent. You need to produce the same product over and over and over again. How will they do with that? I think it's interesting that Polaris actually kept a small portion of Indian in this sale. So to me, the read on that is if Indian does great, Polaris benefits from having that small ownership stake as well. If it doesn't, they may be in a position to welcome it back into the fold down the road. Maybe. I don't know. That's pure speculation, but we've seen it before.
Yeah, but I mean, because that was one thing that stood out to me too, as to like they're going to retain a small piece. I was just like, why? Just
Maybe it's advisory too. Maybe they will be able to help that.
Oh, that's true.
Help that along because they've got some skin in the game.
No, that would make sense too. Is just like, okay, you're going to get these people. We're going to retain this expertise, but we could help you as a result of this minority stake. So Jeff, you were saying a little bit about the history, and some people took issue. So with the report, I said it was a 125-year-old brand, right? And a lot of people took issue with that because they're like, I mean, okay, sure, like day one to now, 125 years, but like they took a 53-year break. And there have been a lot of stops and starts, and I'm just like, well, I can't like, if you go through the history of Indian, all of a sudden a 3-minute report becomes a 45-minute expose. And so it is a weird history, but I got to say, like, of the brands, this was the first motorcycle I ever rode on. Like, my mom bought a small Indian when I was like 12, and it was like the coolest thing ever.
They're great looking bikes. They always have been.
No, and I think like, of the brands, like there's just something to it with like Harley too. Like Indian, I feel like is a brand that everyone wants it to work, but it just, I mean, well, the other thing that stood out to me before we get out of here was in case you missed it, was that, so last year, Kawasaki became the best-selling motorcycle brand in the U.S., followed by Honda, Harley, Yamaha, and then Indian. I was surprised that they were fifth. I was really surprised that Kawasaki was first, as were a lot of people that were commenting on this. But, still, while the market has suffered some historic lows, like the worst first-half sales in 10 years, Indian last year had nearly 5% growth. So there are some good things coming out of Indian, and we'll see if that can hold. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, Epicor. I don't know if you heard, but this week's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Did you know that 70% of companies say generative AI has either already disrupted their business, is starting to disrupt their business, or will have significant impact in the next 18 months? Did you know 32% of companies view AI as the most important technology in their organization today. And did you know 28% of companies will pay more for AI as they consider it the most essential in their SaaS application? A new report, AI in Manufacturing, How AI is Reshaping Manufacturing Strategies, tells you how to implement AI and increase time to value with AI. So download the report right now. There is a link in the body copy. There is a link in the live chat. All right, in case you missed it, stories that maybe weren't as popular, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, would you mind going first? What is your, in case you missed it this week?
Sure, I would be glad to. I selected the story titled Boeing Posts Strongest Quarter of Airplane Deliveries Since 2018. And this is really a story that I wanted to make sure that people saw.
Yeah.
Because we've been covering Boeing's troubles for years, really going back to the first quarter of 2019 when the first MAX jet crash took place, and then kind of chronicling their challenges all the way through, more recently, the quality issues, FAA oversight.
The shadow factory.
The shadow factories, the certification delays, that was all kind of 24, 25. In a shift of winds, perhaps. Boeing has reported its strongest quarter of deliveries since 2018. Now, you may recall delivery rates were lagging in previous quarters due to, like you mentioned, the shadow factories. Mm-hmm. That was the remanufacturing required on planes that were already finished. The new CEO of Boeing had said, like, hey, actually, we are making progress on this. And then ultimately this past fall, they said, we're done. We're done with it. And we were all kind of like, well, we'll see. I mean, me as well, because, it pays more for them to be optimistic about that. But I think we are maybe seeing the results of that. So Boeing had 160 commercial deliveries in the quarter, more than double the 57 deliveries in the prior year period. And because airplane makers get most of their cash on delivery, this is a big deal for Boeing to have that influx. This is really important for them. There was also a recent change in allowing Boeing to produce some more planes that were kind of still under that purview of the FAA. So good things for Boeing right now. If you want to take a quick snapshot of that, good things for Boeing right now. You want to see this company succeed. I think we all do because of the history and just how much water they carry in Aero. So yeah, I just, I didn't want that to get brushed under the rug that they've had a decent quarter, and hopefully it's a sign of good things to come.
Well, I mean, that's why it gets overlooked, right? Because it's good news. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Wait, things are going well at Boeing? Fine. Don't need to look into that anymore. Yeah. Don't need to click that. Sounds good enough for me. No, it honestly, for me, it was really good news and kind of unexpected just because we have been, as you mentioned, tracking the closing of those shadow factories and like real efforts to improve operations. And it appears like it's working. Jeff, when you heard about this story or read the story, what'd you think?
Well, two things. Impressive that they overcame what you would assume was some pretty serious supply chain disruptions with tariffs. You're talking about all the aluminum and steel that they need to source, the electronic componentry that they need to source, most likely from overseas, to complete these planes and get them delivered. Yeah, very impressive. The other thing is it made me wonder, I would think Airbus is also pretty happy to see Boeing doing well because that's got to relieve some of the pressure on their supply chain, on their production needs as well. They were operating at a huge, they had a lot of stuff in waiting, I should say, a lot of stuff on delay. So I wonder if even though they're competitors, I understand that, you almost feel like they feel good about that as well. And
they have
it kind of helps the whole marketplace.
They have an insane backlog of orders as well. So it's like, at what point is that a detriment to your operation? Is like sitting on all that you cannot produce. So.
Yeah, I always like that. Just like, well, I mean, we've got like thousands of orders.
Just years of backlog.
Yeah, years of work. All right. My, in case you missed it, was an article about how realistic are the commitments from top trading partners that have pledged to invest $5 trillion in America. So, President Trump has convinced many of America's biggest trading partners to pledge some $5 trillion in U.S. investment. A new study from the Peterson Institute for International Economics, this is a nonpartisan think tank that supports free trade, has some doubts as to whether the money will actually materialize. The commitments were made last year by the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Persian Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, however you say it, Bahrain. Well, I mean, I know that how to say it, but both people say it differently. You know what I mean.
You're good.
And the UAE. Trump used the threat of tariffs to land these concessions. Now, the White House says it is $9.6 trillion, and Trump has used the figure up to $18 trillion. But we're gonna work with the $5 trillion that we can trace. So, for comparison, the total private investment in the U.S. was most recently running at $5.4 trillion annually. So we're talking about the total U.S. investment in 1 year. In 2024, total foreign direct investment in the U.S. was just $151 billion. Now, looking at the $5 trillion, the timelines in the metrics are a little muddy. For example, the European Union said it will invest $600 billion in the U.S. Great! That sounds great. But according to the report, quote, it carries no legally binding commitment. The report also finds that some countries would strain to meet their pledges. For example, the UAE and Qatar likely would have to finance the investments by borrowing. So I picked this story because a lot of times this is the biggest thing that jumps out to me whenever we see these huge announcements, just like trillions from here, billions from here, thousands of jobs. And I feel better knowing that people outside of us are tracking the reality of it and whether or not it's going to happen. So what are things to watch for, right? The Supreme Court could strike down tariffs in February, as early as February, which would likely be countered by alternative tariffs, and we'd continue this dance. The researchers do agree that the investment Trump lands could end up in creating jobs, spurring economic growth, making supply chains more secure, all by bringing production to America. But the researchers said, quote, this approach may yield real investments and jobs, but it raises familiar industrial policy concerns. Opaque projection selection, weak accountability, and the risk that political criteria crowd out economic efficiency. When you look into this report, some of these deals have horizons as long as 10 years. The lowest is 4 years, and some of them for Qatar, Taiwan, and Bahrain don't even have one. So it was just, Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to look at this story, but for me, it was just like, oh, okay, other people are looking at this and they recognize that there's a little bit more, they want to hold people's feet to the fire, that it's actually going to happen.
Well, I guess I didn't put a whole lot of energy behind these promises because to me, a lot of this happens organically. Yeah. This was just one individual, our president, basically trying to take credit for things that happen because, we do business here, essentially. And that's always what it felt like to me when you talk about commitments for this and that. Yeah, okay.
You always take that with a grain of salt.
I don't really put a whole lot in that. It certainly wasn't because of one administration's work. It's because of what the markets indicate is the best option for those companies, those countries, whatever the case may be. So it is good for accountability at every level, obviously. I think it's always interesting when the researchers hedge their bets a little bit and say, well, it could. It might. Yeah. There's a possibility. It's not zero.
It totally could happen.
So that's fine. And they're not wrong to do that. But again, I guess I just never got that vested in these promises to begin with. I need to see it before I believe it.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'm a little more sensitive to it. And we talk about it all the time, but like our proximity to the Foxconn deal where we've seen like big promises, broken ground. And, but I mean, you're right. Like, as a result, and you talk about the previous administrations, they talk about how basically in Trump 1, Biden and Trump 2, this has worked in one way or another. For Biden, it was all infrastructure, investment, green energy, and Trump 2 was all throwing that out and, making them pay to do their own manufacturing in the U.S. The other thing that they pointed out, Anna, was what we need, right? We need to make sure that we have the governance and accountability frameworks for the projects And right now that's lacking. The selection process for projects needs to become more transparent. While many of the projects reflect national security interests, they should also incorporate and respond to market incentives to ensure that they are efficient. And finally, public oversight is needed to ensure responsible project management and transparency among suppliers to reduce the risk of corruption. And when I read these key takeaways at the end of the report, I'm like, doesn't that go without saying? Like, don't we normally have that? But I don't know. Did anything, were there any red flags for you in this report or anything in particular that stood out to you?
I mean, I was a bit with Jeff on it that when this stuff was taking place, it felt like lip service to me at the time.
Yeah.
Why would you not commit to this if, like, I mean, the rollout for many of these projects is years long.
Yeah.
You have a lot of time and a lot of runway for things to change. And you could really justify not following through on the promise for like many, many things that could come up in the meantime.
Yeah.
So of course you don't want your economy to be dinged by the tariffs. So you say, oh, okay, yeah, we will participate. We will.
Yeah.
We will do it. And it's very easy for that to get kind of swept under the rug or kick that can down the road or wait for things to change as they inevitably will and do. So to me too, it was like,
sure.
I guess accountability frameworks would be great, but I think maybe then you would not see so many commitments if people had to actually like sign away.
Yeah.
$600 billion.
Well, we'll give you maybe $600 billion. Give us like 4 to 10 years, maybe. And, but I also thought that it was, that they actually went in to see what the amount committed by each country was or territory was, and then look to see whether or not that was even financially possible.
Well, and no one is going to do it if it isn't, and that's why why it's so nebulous. I mean, you look at what just happened with Audi saying that they were going to build a factory in the U.S. They've already walked that back. That was like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But that was like tariff related. And the reason that they're backing out is also tariff related.
Yeah.
So again, there's just so many moving parts here and it's fluctuating wildly still. It doesn't make sense for these investments to just like take place just because.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening and I never did.
Well, and I guess for everyone watching or listening that, when you hear this type of news and you do have some skepticism, it's warranted. It's well warranted. Jeff, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
Well, I have a feeling when you guys posted this one, you had a good idea I might grab on this one for
it's
in case you missed it.
It's a farm story for Jeff.
It sure is. So this is an article entitled Investment in Farm Productivity Tools, Key to Reducing Greenhouse Gas. So this was a study from Cornell University. They basically looked at things between 1961 and 2021. And during this time, both global agricultural production and emissions obviously increased. But productivity grew by 270%. Emissions, still a high number, I'll give you that, 45%. So productivity outpaced emissions. This is a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this, and it doesn't go into any specific examples here with the study or with this particular article, but I think we can kind of read between the lines a little bit. One of the things that has improved so dramatically in agriculture is data. Gathering data, understanding the soil, understanding what you're working with, what crops are going to work best, how can we become more efficient with the application of pesticides, what type of growing cycles, all of these types of things aided by software, and now aided by artificial intelligence that help us generate algorithms that can help us make better decisions on how to best use our land. You throw in technological improvements like more fuel-efficient equipment, potentially electric equipment, better use of irrigation systems. All of these things coming together have helped farmers to produce more with less waste.
Yeah.
Overall, very, very positive. One of the points made in the article as well is this was made possible through a lot of research and development.
You don't say.
Which has been under fire lately. So I think potentially, in addition to just it being a positive story about the application of technology and data, it's also kind of a case study or a template proving that when you put R&D dollars into the right place, there is a beneficial outcome and one that'll continue to benefit literally everybody.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting for those reasons.
Well, and when you put R&D dollars are not always going to go in the right place because that's why they're R&D dollars, right? You're trying to figure out what works. And it is such a long game. And right now we are in this moment of like now. I need it now. And it's so short-sighted. And that's why, like, ever since I started covering this industry, first from like a very small design engineering perspective, it was, you always saw that the winners that came out of anything were the ones that were always investing in R&D. And it just makes sense. It's preparing. It's not future proofing, but it's preparing for the future. Anna, when you looked at this story, it had to be encouraging for you.
For sure. Yeah. I thought it was great. And, one of the authors of this report had said that, it was important that they could show that there were environmental goals that you could achieve while also increasing productivity. Because sometimes people think like, oh, well, if we want to do it the fastest way, we have to, it's got to be dirty, or it's got, and it's not necessarily the case. Although I do agree with Jeff that, like, when you talk about R&D and where that funding is going, and how it needs to be, reinforced as we go forward. So the author, his name is Ariel Ortiz Bobea, said, in a world with very limited resources, we need to better think about how we can design an R&D policy where we're setting clear goals for what we want to achieve. I thought that was a very impactful statement. I know you're saying, like, you can't just look at the right now, and that R&D is a long game. And I agree with that in a sense. But at the same time, like, we've covered so many things on this podcast, like making a miniature race car that runs on Fritos or whatever. It's like,
that's a great idea.
Well, I know. And there's like the thing that leads to the thing argument, of course. But also, like, we do have a lot of real world problems like that need to be solved like ASAP. Mm-hmm. So prioritizing some of that funding and some of the, how are we going to use the intellectual and the monetary resources that we have to solve problems today that need to be solved today. I do think that that's an important component to this that needs to be really looked at.
Yeah, no, it's a complete picture. Like, we need to address the problems of today, but also we need to continue investing in
making Frito cars.
We need to make those Frito cars because one day someone's going to figure out that the emissions from the Frito car is going to cure eczema, and they'll just be like, I didn't see that coming. It's crazy. Yeah, just like, what are you doing? I got to go in the Frito race car tent, and boom, just going to clear me right up.
In 200 years, when we're all dead.
Yeah, from eczema. No.
David will be fine. The robot overlords will spare him.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to be... my consciousness will be alive.
They're like, we got to keep this guy for his math skills.
I'll just be like, look, I told you, the Frito car had legs. Like, because Fritos obviously by then will be outlawed as an ultra-processed food that, is terrible for humans. But because we kept it, we're going to cure eczema. All right, before we get out of here, let's jump into our final thoughts for this week. Anna, what's your final thought?
So my kids have had some extra days off since Christmas break because of weather and grading. Tomorrow's report card day.
Yes.
And this is sad, but like, I live for their days off because I hate packing their lunches and I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I know that you're thinking, like, your kids are old enough. They can pack their own lunches. But
I'm certainly not thinking
what they put in there is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And if I pack them, they will eat the healthy foods that I pack, and they will not complain. But if I give them the freedom to do it themselves, then that's like a fruit snack lunch. All fruit snacks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fruit. No, it's this was the week that I abandoned the sandwich.
It takes so long to make a kid's lunch.
But
they all want different stuff. And so then I'm like cutting fruit and all this stuff forever. It takes forever.
Well, and it's just, what are they going to eat? Something different always comes home where they didn't touch it. And you're like, why didn't you eat the strawberries? You love strawberries. Just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
Well, I'm going to throw away this like $90 bag of strawberries then because you just weren't feeling it. No, I completely understand that. And have you tried to breach the like hot lunch question at all?
Every day we look at the lunch menu and I ask,
yeah, okay,
do you want tomorrow's?
Do they ever say yes?
Yeah. Sometimes they do. And my 8-year-old daughter gets school lunch almost every day.
Oh,
she's down with it. She's like pretty chill, but the other two are like, no.
Yeah.
Cut me cucumber sticks.
Oh, yeah. It's a hard no. It's a hard no. And then I'm like, well, then tell me what you want in your lunch. I don't know.
I hate everything, actually. Yeah, I know. You get it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, you should see some of the lunches where I just put 5 things that I think are slam dunk consumables or consumption. And then they come back. I'm like, you didn't eat pepperoni? And he's just like, meh. Anders said that he didn't like pepperoni. I'm like, so you don't like pepperoni now? Just like, whatever. Eat your nitrates, son.
Fine.
Man, feeling that one, Anna. Feeling that one.
Yep.
My final thoughts this week are that next week we are recording the podcast on Wednesday. And by we, I mean Jeff and Anna with most likely Andy Zoll. So please join us live on Wednesday for that. If you want to talk to me, do like sort of a in-person podcast forum. I'm going to be at the MDM show in Anaheim. So if you see me on the show floor at all, please stop, say hi. Always like to kind of meet up with readers, listeners, and viewers and kind of pick their brain a little bit, see what they like or don't like about the show or in the industry in general. The other is briefly, so my final thought last week was that I was going ice fishing and I was going to love it and it was going to be relaxing and everyone should go because it's beautiful and just look outside. And I don't know if you've ever experienced an ice quake, but so we're about halfway through. We're a couple hours in. And, I'm fine on the ice. But when we drive out onto the ice, and no matter what you hear, they're like, boom, boom, boom. And it's just like, yeah, it's fine. But I'm still not comfortable with it. We are sitting in our pop-up, just having a great time catching perch. And all of a sudden to the left, boom. And to the front, boom. And to the back, boom. And to the right of us, boom. And I was just like, that's odd. And then we fell. And not only did we fall, but then we started rocking back and forth like we were in a boat. And and I looked over to my brother who ice fishes every day. And I'm just like, is this normal? Is this normal? He's like, we're fine. And he's like, probably a truck passing by. And like when we dropped, water shot up through the holes. And I was just like, this does not seem normal. And then everything settled. And it was fine. And it turns out that, the nature of being on a bay where there's water moving around, like sometimes the water level drops and then the ice shelf as a whole just drops down. Made it way less the R&R and more the anxiety. And like finally he did kind of cop to me, like after he realized I was done like thinking we were going to die, he's just like, nah. But yeah, I've never seen that before. That was really weird. He's like, but if you think about it, even if it did crack around us and we dropped in, we'd still likely float. So we'd still likely be able to get out. And I'm just like, you're not making it better. He's like,
yikes.
Well, even if it breaks, we could probably still make it in the car and get over. And I'm like, stop talking. Stop. But other than that, it was a great time. Caught some perch. Had a great time. Had a great meal afterwards. But there are still some hiccups along the way. And every time that you have great intentions to just relax, spend some time with friends and family, it can still go awry. And man, I thought I was being swallowed whole by Green Bay, and I was going to my watery grave. And I'm just like, as we fell, the last thing I heard was both of our wives saying, like, seems pretty cold. Kind of seems like a dumb idea today. No, it's going to be fine. I'm like, Brian, this is what they're going to remember. This is it. So when you're out on that ice, it's great to have a good time, but be careful. And even if the entire ice below you drops, you'll probably be fine.
Well, your brother probably had the built-in life preserver in his
coat,
right?
He wasn't wearing that.
Oh.
No, he wasn't wearing that. He's like, I only have to wear that when I go out alone. I'm like, but what if we're both in the water? But he just had an answer for everything. He's like, I thought it through. We'd be fine. I'm like, Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So 3 years ago, I stopped playing men's league basketball.
Oh.
Like it was too much. I was getting beat up, all that kind of stuff. Took a year off and I was sitting at home. And during the winters here in Wisconsin, this is why we go ice fishing, because you get kind of, sedentary. There's not a lot going on. So I'm like, you know what? Last year, I'm going to get back in. I'm going to play. I told him, give me 10, 15 minutes, just a little bit so I can run around, break up a sweat. Went well.
Great.
This year, it is back to being an extremely physical league. And this was reinforced because our team, we kind of blew a late lead, went to overtime. Now, we had the 9 o'clock game, so it's like 10 o'clock on a Monday night playing basketball. My knees are screaming at me. We're going to overtime, and the ref goes, or we could just go home.
Yeah.
And, you know me enough to know I'm a fairly competitive person in the moment. After the game, I'm fine. Yeah. But in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually had a fleeting thought, all right. That's not bad. I mean, I immediately correct, no, we're going to play.
Yeah.
But just having that split second of like, well, yeah.
Get out of my way.
I think it's time for me to hang the sneakers up for good.
No.
I think this is my last year of men's league. My knee is stiff just standing here doing this podcast.
Just dial the minutes back.
Did you bring it home?
It's not important, Anna. Obviously, the answer
Sorry to hear.
We blew it in overtime.
No, it's I mean, that's you get to a certain age, and then after every season, you're just like, ooh, that probably would have been a good one to end on. But then it comes up to sign up, and you're just like, I'm going for it.
No, this is it.
No,
this is
no.
it.
All right, put the timestamp in for this time next year, because he'll just be like, man, we went to overtime and we took it, beat them, and they were like maybe 23. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily newsletter and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every week when we go live. Next week, it's going to be Wednesday. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Mantey. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We will see you next week.